What's going on, everybody? I'm Nick with Sekou Technologies, and I'd like to welcome you back to another JavaScript and jQuery tutorial. And today I'm going to tell you something really good, because today we're talking all about objects. Now, if you could think back to some of our earlier videos, you'll remember that we actually talked about these objects. However, today we're going to be doing something a little bit different with these objects. We're going to create some new objects of our own. We're also going to add some properties to these objects, and also I'm going to show you how you create methods, which are nothing more than functions. So if you can think back, you'll remember that objects group together sets of variables and functions to create a model of something that we would want to recognize in the real world. In an object, variables and functions take on brand new names. If a variable is part of an object, then we're going to call it a property. Remember, properties tell us something about an object, such as the name of a hotel or the number of rooms it has, which is going to be the example that we use throughout the day. We've actually created a brand new web page that contains different hotels and also the features, aka the properties of these hotels, right? So think, property is nothing more than a description or a detail of the description of an object. Okay? On the flip side of that, we also have these things called functions. If a function is part of an object, then today we're going to call it a method. Actually, every day you're going to call it a method. Methods represent tasks that are associated with an object. For example, you're going to see that we're going to be able to check how many rooms are available by subtracting the number of booked rooms from the number of total rooms. Okay? So we're going to do some really cool stuff today. Before we jump into creating our first object, or our hotel rather, remember, like variables and also named functions, properties and methods have a name and a value. In an object, the name of these are called keys. An object cannot have two keys with the same name, just like we cannot have two global variables that have the same name. Everything has to be what's called a unique identifier. Everything has its own social security number, pretty much. No two people can have it. If somebody else has your social security number, you've got issues. Same exact thing with our JavaScript code. All right, so let's jump into our text editor. And on your screen, you should have class number 9's HTML document. And also in like fashion, you should have a blank JavaScript document on the opposite side. Okay. Now, before we jump into it, let's take a look at what our beautiful fake Expedia.com website looks like at the current moment. Oh, yes. Look how gorgeous it is. This is amazing. As a matter of fact, I think this is better than Expedia. We have Hotel Quay, the Playa del Buca, the Wimbledon up in New York City. I mean, this is wonderful. Okay. What I'm going to show you how to do is actually to update this information within objects, also those objects and their methods, and also the properties. These are going to be properties of the Quay Hotel object. So let's figure out how to create this Quay Hotel object. Let's check it out. So back in our text editor, in our JavaScript document, all we're going to do is create a brand new variable. And the name of this variable is going to be called Quay _ hotel. This is going to be our Quay Hotel object. And within that object, remember, we need to enter in our properties and also the methods. And methods are nothing more than functions. So the first property that we're going to have is the hotel's name. And the name of it is Quay. Now, as we create properties and also as we create methods within our JavaScript objects, they're going to be separated by a comma. Okay, this takes place in a couple of more places, but for the sake of right now, got people trying to talk to me on Facebook, but for the sake of right now, we're not going to be using any semicolons until we create a method. So just like in functions within the last videos, those functions contain the semicolons that end our statements. It's going to be the same thing in here. However, when we separate the keys within our objects, we separate those with a comma. So the next property that we're going to have is rooms. And this is just going to be the total number of rooms in our hotel. The number of booked rooms, we're going to say 25. And also we're going to introduce an array, which is going to contain the room types. And we're going to have a twin room, a double room, a queen, a king room, and also a suite. And last but not least, it's time to create our first method, our function. And all this function is going to do is check the availability. So we're going to call this function check availability. And to do this, all we have to do is specify it as a function. And then everything is the exact same as when we created our functions in earlier videos. We come down and we introduce our statements. So we're going to say that we want this function to return our Quay Hotel.rooms property minus Quay Hotel.booked property. Now, another way that we could have called the Quay Hotel.rooms property is by saying return this dot rooms. Okay. And the reason why we're able to say this dot rooms is because at the moment, JavaScript recognizes this as being equal to Quay underscore hotel. So this is just an easier way for us to specify an object if we're already working within that particular object, rather than having to call its full name. Okay. So remember, we can either say Quay Hotel.rooms or we could say this dot rooms. But for the sake of right now, I like keeping everything uniform. So typically I just write out the entire variable name. Okay. So we've got that. Great. We've created our brand new Quay Hotel object. Now it's time for us to pass through the properties into the elements of our HTML page so we can update the description. Okay. So to do that, remember, just like in the same exact fashion as we did with everything else that we've ever created, we're going to create a brand new variable called L, which is short for element. We're going to call this LQuay rooms. It's going to be equal to document.getElement by ID. And the ID that we're going to pass through is the Quay underscore rooms property. ID, I mean. We get the text content property and we set it equal to our Quay Hotel dot rooms property. All right, which is equal to 40. As a matter of fact, you know what? Let's do something a little bit different. We don't want to do that. Rather, let's use our function that we just created so we can use that value and we can pass it through here and we'll be able to show the available rooms within the Quay Hotel. So to do this, we create another variable. I'm pretty sure you all are getting the hang of this right now, but we create another variable, and we'll call this variable available rooms. And all we're going to do is set it equal to the value of our Quay Hotel check availability function. Okay. So all this is going to do, it's going to run our function. So it's going to say, hey, I want you to take the total number of rooms in the hotel, subtract the number of booked rooms, and I want you to set it equal to the available rooms variable, right? So this available rooms variable now has that particular value. Now we can just say available rooms whenever we reference our HTML document. Great. So we continue doing this for all of the rest of our IDs or any other piece of content that we want to update. So var l Quay booked is going to be equal to document dot get element by ID Quay underscore booked dot text content is gonna be equal to booked rooms, and we're gonna concatenate our Quay Hotel dot booked property. Okay. Next, we're going to do the room types. Var L room types is equal to document dot get element by ID. The name of this ID is Quay room type. Remember, you're going to want to make sure those IDs are correct, because if not, it's not going to be able to find it and it's not going to show any information. Text content is going to be equal to available room types. And let's just say the only available room that we have is going to be the King Suite. So we'll say Quay Hotel dot room types. We're going to open up our brackets and let's say number 3. All right, so this looks great. I'm going to change total to available. I'm going to save it. Now let's run it. Let's make sure that we have our JavaScript document referenced in our HTML. So I set the source equal to methods, class number 9. I save it. And now we're going to run it. And let's see what we get. All right, there we go. So we have our location. Great. That was referenced in our HTML. We actually put that in that document. However, now it says the available number of rooms is down to 15 because remember we had 40 rooms total. The book number of rooms is 25, so 40 minus 25 is equal to 15. And the available room types is just the King. Great. And the price of that King room is $160 a night. Great. Now, let's take a look at what we just did. There's actually a couple of ways for us to create objects. The first way is through what's called literal notation. Okay, and this is going to be the easiest and also the most popular way to create objects. Keep in mind, there's several ways to create objects. Okay, so that's called literal notation. And all we do is create our object variable. We open up our code block and we just simply reference our keys that contain our properties and our methods. That's it. The next way for us to create objects is going to be through what's called constructor notation. Okay? Constructor notation. And the only thing we do is introduce this new keyword. Okay, you've probably seen this before if you've worked with other programming languages, other object-oriented programming languages. But now we're just going to evoke the new keyword. And the new keyword and the object constructor creates a blank object. You can then add properties, as you see right here, and methods to that particular object, right? So let's figure out how we do that. We've used literal notation. Now let's use constructor notation. So all I'm going to do right now is create a comment that separates our Quay hotel from the new hotel that we're going to be working with right now. Okay, so I'll say hotel number 2 code begins here. All right. So let's see how we can work with this. So once again, we're going to create a brand new variable that's going to hold our object. And the name of this hotel is Playa del Buca. So we'll call this variable Playa del Buca Hotel. I made all of these hotel names up, by the way. We're going to set it equal to the new keyword object. Okay, so no parameters at the moment. And now if we want to add properties and methods to this new object that we just created, now we have to call the object name, which is Playa del Buca. And then we begin to enter in the properties, the keys. So we say Playa del Buca.name is equal to Playa del Buca Playa del Buca dot rooms is going to be equal to 60. Playa del Buca dot booked is going to be equal to 17. Playa del Buca dot location is going to be equal to Cancun, Mexico. Viva la Mexico. And also let's add another check availability function. So Playa del Buca dot check availability is going to be equal to function. We're going to open up our code block and it's going to return this dot rooms minus this dot booked. So now we're using the new way, just so you all can see how it works. I come down, I add in my semicolons, I save it, and now here's what we're gonna do that's a little bit different. Okay, first and foremost, we're gonna need to add IDs to this. However, I know that it's called Playa del Buca, but we'll add them in. So this ID is Playa del Buca location. This ID is going to be equal to rooms. This one's going to be equal to Playa del Buca booked. Uh-oh. Got some issues here. Hang on. Playa del Buca booked. We don't have a room type, but we're going to go on ahead and keep this in here. And we'll just say these are all of the available room types. And last but not least, we're going to enter in the element that shows how many rooms are available. Nope, we've got that already. So, yep, looks like we've got everything. So we are good to go. So now we come back over to our JavaScript document. And once again, in the same exact fashion, we just create our references to these IDs. So var L Playa del Buca underscore location is going to be equal to document dot get element by ID. And we'll just copy and paste this because I know it's long to write and we have to make sure that everything is perfect or else it's not going to run. So dot text content is going to be equal to location plus our Playa del Buca object and the location property. Boom. So we've got that in. Next, we're going to create a new one that contains the number of available rooms. Underscore rooms is equal to document dot get element by ID. And the ID that we're going to pass through is this one. Dot text content is going to be equal to available rooms. And we're going to concatenate our Playa del Buca hotel object okay. Next, let's see, what's it look like we have? We've got booked. So let's do one for that and then we will be finished because I know this is a lot to type. But hey, on the bright side, you're going to look at what it's like to actually be a programmer. Pretty cool, right? Equals document dot get element by ID. The parameter that we're going to pass through is the booked ID. Dot text content is going to be equal to booked rooms. And we're concatenating our Playa del Buca hotel object with the booked value. Great. Well, with the booked property. So we save it and let's run it. And let's see how it looks. All right, it's thinking about it. Okay, so we don't have anything right here, and I think I know why. So let's come down. If yours showed, great. If yours doesn't and you're using brackets, at times I find that I have to go back in and I have to reintroduce our script document in our HTML. Okay. And let's see if that works. If not, then we're going to go through and we're going to check our JavaScript. Okay, so it's still not showing up. Oh, you know what? Actually it is showing up. Wow, okay, so we kind of messed up, but it's actually showing down here in this third section underneath the Wimbledon. But yet and still, that is still totally okay because the job overall got done. So even though this is the Wimbledon, we're saying that it's in Cancun, Mexico. The number of available rooms is 43. Booked rooms is 17. And the room types available are twin, double, king, and suite. Great. So it looks good. Okay, we understand the JavaScript, even though we went in and we referenced kind of the wrong elements, but that's an easy fix because all we have to do is go over and update this title to Playa del Buca. So instead, I'm going to come over to my header, change this to Playa del Buca. And then in my one up here, I'm just going to call this one the Wimbledon. As you can see, it's been updated. And the reason why this is blank is because I want you to work with this one in your homework, okay, for the class. However, there's one more thing that I'm going to show you guys before we wrap up. I'm going to show you how to update an object, which is super easy. And then I'm also going to show you how we can create multiple objects at the same time. So first things first, updating an object. What if I wanted to change the location or the number of available rooms within one of my hotels? Okay, well, that's easy for us to do. Let's update this from the number of total rooms from 60, and let's say we added on to 70. So all we would have to do is call the variable. We open up our brackets, and now we reference the key that we would like to update. And in this case, it's rooms. It's going to be our rooms property. And instead, we're going to say it's equal to 70. Okay, so we save it, run it, and it should update the total number of available rooms. So let's see if it did that. There we go. So before it was 43 and now it's 53. So that's how we update particular values within our objects. That's how we update the properties in our objects. Want to make sure I'm using the right lingo here. Last but not least is going to be how in the heck are we able to create many objects all at once? So let me make a separator, a comment separator. Gonna give myself some space. So how do we do that? It's very easy. Sometimes we're gonna want several objects to represent similar things. For example, we're gonna want to create multiple hotels. Object constructors can use a function as a template for creating these objects. First, we have to create the template with the object's properties and also the methods. Okay, so we're going to create a brand new function that's called hotels multiple. And all we're doing right now is just passing through the properties and just the properties and the functions that we want within this particular object, or the objects that we later create. So these are going to be the properties. We have booked in here. We open up our code blocks. And once again, we're able to go through and say hotels multiple dot name is equal to name. and this is going to be the name property. Okay, these are nothing more than parameters. Okay, parameters, and these parameters are going to take the value of the keys and the properties within our objects. So hotels multiple dot rooms is going to be equal to our rooms key. Hotels dot multiple dot booked is going to be equal to our booked key. And last, let's go on ahead and create our check availability function. Dot check availability is going to be equal to function. We'll open up our code block and we run it to return the same thing as within the other sections. Great. So we've created our function, and all this function is going to do is create brand new objects for us. That's it. So if I wanted to go through and I actually wanted to create these new objects, all I'm having to do right now is create another variable that contains the name of that particular object. And this one is going to be called hotel underscore Wimbledon. And we're going to set it equal to our new keyword. And now our hotels multiple function. And within our hotels multiple function, we're just going to pass through the parameters, the properties of this new object that we just created. So the hotel name is going to be called the Wimbledon. Inside of it, we're going to say that it has 200 rooms. We're going to say it's massive. And the total booked is 189. People love this particular hotel. Great. So I save it, and now we have created our brand new object. If I wanted to, if I wanted to create another hotel, I would just go through and do the exact same thing. So I would say hotel new is equal to new, our hotels multiple function. And now I'm just passing in the properties within the parameters. And I'll say that the name of this hotel is called new hotel. Enter in the number of rooms and also the number of booked rooms. And I end it with a semicolon. So now this is making the entire process that much easier for me to create these objects. I'm not having to do them one by one. In this case, I've created a function, and the properties of that function, the parameters of that function rather, are just going to contain all of the properties and methods within that our hotel is going to have. Makes the process way, way, way easier. I'm not going to show how we create that connection to our HTML document because I want you guys to do that in the homework. Okay, so jumping right back over to the PowerPoint. Homework. I want you to create a car object, and I also want you to finish up this particular project. I want you to create the object including all of its properties and literal notation and also constructor notation. Create functions that calculate how many miles until the car's next oil change, considering that an oil change happens every 8,000 miles. So it's a bit of a challenge, but I want you to think algebraically. You can either update the HTML page that we just created to mimic a car website, or you can create an alert. It's your choice, or you can create a totally new HTML document. Once again, you guys have been great. This has been Nick with Sekou Technologies. I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.